So it's the top of the hour. Welcome to Answering the Call, the role of extension after an emergency. I'm Molly Immendorf, the design manager for eXtension Foundation, and I am so happy to welcome you to today's presentation. I have just a couple of notes. If you would like to ask questions or make comments, please use the chat or the Q&A feature here in this webinar. And I'd like to introduce and welcome the team from Southern University Agricultural Research and Extension Center, who has been working with the Impact Collaborative. Let's see, we've got Nicolette Jordan, we've got Kiana Kelly, Marlon Ford, Angel Jordan, and Crystal Allen. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Crystal.
Forgot the important step of unmuting my mic. Just the muting and unmuting, we're getting used to our new normal with online and virtual programming. So if you guys notice some pauses, it's because we're muting and unmuting. And as Molly said before, you got to kind of get comfortable with silence when you're in a virtual community. I do want to start before we begin by thanking eXtension for extending the invitation for us to step up and present this webinar today. It is our goal that extension professionals can step up within their own communities and be the change they wish to see. So with that being said, I'm gonna get to the fun stuff, which is what you came here for today. Answering the call, the role of extension after an emergency. Southern University Agricultural Research and Extension Center. Now I know you're probably wondering, why did she say that again? So I refer to it as SUAREC. I thought I created this. I thought it was my invention that when I read it, I say SUAREC. And then when we got into our group meetings and I was like, SUAREC, SUAREC, a few people were like, Crystal, what are you talking about? So when I say SUAREC, I'm referring to the Southern University Agricultural Research and Extension Center. I just wanted to clarify so I wouldn't lose anybody on the journey. So today we'll narrate a journey, or shall I say a shared experience. We're going to begin with an overview of the 2016 Great Flood of Louisiana. It's often called the historic 2016 flood as well. We're going to detail our individual responses to this emergency. And then we're going to talk about SUAREC's response. SUAREC's response ultimately defined Team Southern JAGriculture and how we will respond to emergencies in the future. But it was actually what we expected. Southern's mission, since I've been there for many years and long before me, has always been linking the citizens of Louisiana with opportunities for success. Unfortunately, that does not always equate to sunshine and beautiful days and webinars and things like that. Sometimes you have to go in after an emergency. We're going to talk about the formation of Southern JAGriculture, and then we're going to wrap it up with ultimately how all of these factors compounded to influence how we will respond to future emergencies, including the current national pandemic, COVID-19. Oh. See, that's one of those things we're getting used to, you guys. Okay, so before we begin, when we were designing today's webinar, we had to think, what can we do to create the most impact and knowledge transfer? And we had to first begin by coming up with a conceptual lens. A conceptual lens is simply a particular concept selected to focus the thinking of a project. It provides guidance and focus, and it increases knowledge transfer. Our goal here today is just to provide examples that can empower you within your individual communities. Now, the 2016 flood was selected because it was a statewide emergency. It was a statewide emergency that impacted each of us in many different ways. When designing today's webinar, we wanted to pull from a shared experience. We wanted to detail our response, but we also wanted to make sure we can let you guys know the best practices that we found most effective during our response to the flood. But what exactly was the flood's impact on Louisiana, and how did it happen? So on Thursday, August 11th, an extreme yet slow-moving low-pressure weather system moved along the Gulf Coast with the heaviest concentration of rainfall in southern Louisiana. Simply put, you guys, it was like a rain cloud positioned itself over our homes, and nonstop rain was pouring down in excess of over 2 feet in certain areas. Up to 31 inches was recorded. I remember looking up and saying, hey, you could have just asked me to build the ark if this is what we're going to do. But as the rain kept coming and the waters rose, 4 of our rivers in Louisiana began to overflow and reach record heights, and that caused flooding. Once the flooding happened and the water entered our homes, it felt as if that cloud had entered our homes as well. We were no longer protected by the shelter of our homes, and we had to think fast and quickly. The flooding and the rain was so severe, Governor John Bel Edwards declared a statewide state of the emergency, and President Obama had to declare a major disaster in 20 of our 64 Louisiana parishes. But as rising flood waters entered homes and inundated businesses, it introduced an entire new set of risks. If you've never experienced flooding, it's not like a nature swimming pool at all. The water is hazardous. It contains human and livestock waste, biohazardous materials, and it moves in such a violent motion that it could literally sweep you with it, whether you're a person or a car. Especially if you're in a home, it picks up everything in its path. So you have to be conscious of sharp materials and anything else that the water has picked up on its journey. Now, taking the flooding into consideration, the lack of power, landline phone use was down, cellular towers were down, and we had very limited access to email. Not to mention, you got to remember the streets were flooded. We began to feel trapped. It felt like the water would never leave. I remember my son asking me, "But Mom, when it leaves, where will it go?" At least 13 deaths were reported as a result of this flood. And even to put it into more perspective, FEMA has a 100-year floodplain. And that's what they use to identify flood risk areas. So homes that had not flooded for over a century were now inundated with water. People who thought they could never flood were dealing with something they just were not prepared for. So when we look at the agricultural impact specifically of the 2016 flood, the chart to the left, that $110 million came from a report published by Louisiana Economic Development. It was extremely conservative and really only considered the impact of production reductions. However, as time went on, when you look at the chart to the right, you'll see that initial estimate of $110 million more than doubled. August 2016 floods impact cost farmers a whopping $277 million, and at least $367 million when you consider crops, livestock, and equipment. I also wanted to take a moment and highlight that the data on the right, it was collected on site by parish level ag center county agents going into the community after a disaster. So how did these things impact Southern JAGriculture? Noticing the great impact of the individual agents, our administration at SUAREC realized we could accomplish much greater together. Southern JAGriculture was created to address programmatic gaps and increase our impact within communities. While working in the communities after the disaster, we realized evacuation is a luxury. Let me repeat that. Evacuation is a luxury. If you look at the chart from the US Census Bureau in 2016, the year of the flood, Louisiana's poverty rate is almost double that of the national poverty rate. When you couple these high poverty rates with a disaster, you have, excuse me, you guys, that's me getting used to it again. When you couple these poverty rates with the response to a disaster, you have a recipe for failure. So we knew we had to be more proactive than reactive and help communities move to a similar framework. Having a plan in place and being prepared has real benefits. Being prepared can help reduce fear and anxiety and the many losses that accompany disasters. We want to ensure communities are sustainable and resilient following a disaster. So what you're here for today? Extension and second responders. What are they and how are they related? Extension. We have extension agents from all over the country on this webinar today. If I ask each of us to give a specific definition just to their office to define extension relative to what you guys are currently doing, I should have a different definition from each extension department, because no communities are the same. Even if you use a curriculum from different communities, you would have to undoubtedly change something because no communities are similar. But what the overarching goal is, extension is outreach, but not simply outreach. Our goal in extension is to leave the communities better than we found them, to help them move along their journey to what the recovery phase, if we're talking in response to emergencies, or just improvement. But second responders, what are they? The second responders arrive when the danger is eliminated, the initial trauma is concluded, and the physical threat is gone. They appear when the emotional needs of the victim rise to the surface. I will see you guys, I had to find a good net example. And when I used the net, I was watching a TED talk and he gave a great example on it. And he said, first responders are like the net of society. They're the safety net of society. They run in danger, they protect and respond first when the threat and danger is imminent. However, as we know, in each safety net, there are spaces between the webbing. And what happens to communities and the people who fall through? What happens is it allows extension professionals to step up and step in within their communities. When your needs are not classified as emergencies, because obviously if you're responding after an emergency and you need to start an after school program or you need to sort canned goods, that's not something first responders do. That's second responders. That's helping communities go into the recovery phase. So in this diagram, the blue people, that's our opportunity as extension professionals to step up into the role of a second responder and help communities restore a sense of normalcy. I like to say normalcy with quotations because I think someone used the example, normal is just a setting on an appliance. But this phenomena allows extension professionals to step in and step up and serve as a bridge, the bridge between where they are currently and the recovery phase, which is the ultimate goal. We just want to empower communities to be sustainable and resilient. Resiliency is the ability to withstand and recover quickly. The operative word being quickly after an emergency. And that is accomplished by being proactive instead of reactive and having a plan in place. Now today, when I said we were going to detail our individual responses, we want you to watch and listen closely. Hopefully you guys can gain some knowledge first, obviously, but even see what can you do within your community. Sometimes it's about finding your niche and identifying what needs to be done and how you can get it done. I'm going to start with the video.
Animals wait in line for free health treatment at the Southern University Pet Clinic.
I'm here today to help my mom in her job because they need the help, and this is my mom's friend's dog, Sierra, and I love animals.
2 veterinarians and volunteers were on hand to give ID chips, vaccinations, and medications to pets and displaced animals for heartworms.
This is the first year that Southern University Ag Center and the College of Agriculture has decided to do a disaster animal wellness clinic. We felt the need to do this because we wanted to do our part. Within agriculture, we deal with animals on a regular basis every day, and we wanted to make sure that we were able to provide to our people in North Baton Rouge and across the state. So we wanted to chip in because we know that a lot of people have been devastated by this disaster, and we just wanted to do our part, and we felt our niche was actually animals.
Pets from Baton Rouge and surrounding areas were treated at this free clinic.
We have serviced over 200 dogs and cats from people not only from East Baton Rouge, but from surrounding parishes as well.
we have some Amish friends that are down from Pennsylvania. They came down with a group of about 60 to help with some flood relief, and they've come to help victims of the flood. They're gutting homes, and I'm just here to serve in any way that they can. And they came to help me for some extra hands today because I certainly have my hands full, and I was thankful for the help.
On location at the Pet Wellness Clinic, I'm Dexter Newman reporting for the Southern University Ag Center.
As you can see, we are moving and shaking in our communities, but now I want to draw your attention to after the crisis and how we implemented our youth educational programs. Of course, I am Nicolette Gordon, Extension Youth Development Agent at Southern University Ag Center. So I need you to close your eyes for me and just imagine your alarm clock going off. You immediately raise up and put your feet into your hardwood floors and you feel 2 inches of water. Yes, that was our reality, August 13, 2016. Many of our homes were silently inundated with water while we slept through what we now call the Great Flood of 2016. As you can see, many of us were only able to leave our homes with the clothing that's on our backs and maybe a few essential items that we could float inside of a plastic bin until the nearest shelter. Now, imagine being a parent, okay? Imagine sorting through living in a shelter temporarily, and now school is back in session. After the Great Flood of 2016, our Red Cross shelter population consisted of youth, undoubtedly, who would begin to start having homework and could potentially have other stressors due to the lack of resources and homelessness. As a second responder, that's where I stepped in. I met with our St. Helena Parish government officials. I also met with our superintendent, Dr. Kelly Joseph, and of course, our Red Cross local management team. Now, what we discussed was our youth educational support program. The YES program is a comprehensive educational program and enrichment program developed through the Southern University Agricultural Research and Extension Center. The services that we provide are family environment, school and community, and extension. This is a long-term commitment that we have with our youth educational support program. Of course, we also provide mentoring, enrichment, and educational support and recreational activities during our sessions. Our target population, of course, is youth ages 6 to 14. The days that we selected was Mondays and Wednesdays to try and keep consistency. And of course, the time was from 3:30 p.m. until 5 o'clock p.m. and mainly given the extra 30 minutes just to kind of wrap up. Now, if you take a look at our next slide, this is a diagram of our daily group schedule. Of course, like I said, on Mondays and Wednesdays were when we would have our afternoon sessions. And if you notice under the activity column, it says encouragement. You know, it's very important. Of course, we do it anyway during our sessions, but you know, it's very important to encourage those youth while they're going through crisis because it essentially gives them a sense of hope. Now, after we conducted our one-on-one needs assessment with our parents, we began to reach out for retired teachers that would help with homework. And the reason that we selected retired teachers is because they have, you know, a little bit more flexibility and they tend to volunteer their services. And of course, I stepped in as an extension agent to provide enrichment in different content areas using our 4-H curriculum. So you see here, we have the young lady that's doing yoga, and we also provided outside recreational activities. So although our program was a temporary after-school program for displaced youth, it also gave us an opportunity to open up to our community in their most vulnerable times of need. And as a second responder, we always take pride in helping to pick up the pieces.
Good afternoon. My name is Angele Jordan. As a family and consumer science assistant area agent in St. Landry Parish, I serve citizens on topics relating to nutrition, health and wellness, and family development. My story is a little different from those of the Great Flood of 2016. I personally did not go through the struggles like many did, but the folks in St. Landry Parish, many of them lost their furniture, vehicles flooded, they lost their food, and they lost many, many, many more items. Extension is what I do, and having a heart is who I am. So I decided to contact the local United Way office to see where I could be that second responder and go and volunteer. I assisted at the local food bank in St. Landry Parish, where myself and others formed an assembly line, and we began to clean and sanitize canned goods. Those canned goods and boxes that we could not salvage, we discarded them. From there, I headed to the Opelousas Civic Center clothing drive-through. There we put on gloves and started ripping through piles of garbage bags of clothing, sorting the clothing according to gender, size, and color. Many people in the community were trying to help however they could, and I was glad to be one of them.
Good afternoon. I am Kiana Kelly, an associate agent in Family and Consumer Sciences. I am housed in the East Baton Rouge Parish, which is our capital area. Here I provide education on family science topics such as health, nutrition, wellness, and aging. I wasn't directly impacted by the flood, but envision taking your normal route to work for 5 days. Over 5 days, you know, your scene is the norm, what your normal scene would be like. Picture every day going to work, more water rising in places that you've never seen water before. That Saturday, I got up to go to the grocery store and turn right as I would normally do to go to my grocery store. You know, sometimes when you're driving down the road, how the sun rays give you this illusion or a mirage that water is on the roadway. As I got closer, I realized that it was not a mirage or an illusion. So as I proceeded to turn around, I looked over into a parking lot where there were several businesses. The parking lot was filled with water as well as those businesses. So I tried to go into the opposite direction to try to get around. And that illusion was definitely a reality. Unlike some, I was able to go back home where others were not able to do so, and they lost their vehicles or their lives. During the historic 2016 flood, some of my colleagues and I decided to go in after the flood water receded and the dust had settled. We went to social service sites where we normally provided educational programming. Those sites were the Jewel J. Newman and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. community centers in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The convoy of care from Atlanta, Georgia sent 6 tractor trailers full of supplies to residents who were in need of assistance. The convoy was organized by the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. There we organized and distributed toys, clothes, and supplies, and just helped in any manner that they needed. During that time, it was extremely important that we went out into the East Baton Rouge community to show our presence from the Southern University Ag Center staff, because we're always committed to assisting and serving the citizens of Louisiana, regardless of the circumstances, in any capacity, whether good or bad.
Hello, everyone.
We can hear you.
Okay, I'm on location. Can you see me?
Yes, we can see you.
Okay, good. I'm on location here. My name is Dr. Marlon Ford. I'm an urban agricultural specialist at the Southern University Research and, excuse me, Southern University Agriculture Research and Extension Center. I'm getting training to do vital things for the community. I'm trying to learn. Well, I'm not learning. I'm really getting certified to be able to drive large vehicles. So just in case we have disasters like the flood again, we won't have to go find someone who can drive this big rig to get it there safely. Also, I'm here getting training on using other large equipment so we can use this in day-to-day things with our agricultural and research center. Now, think about this. You get a phone call from a stakeholder. She's wondering, oh, the rains are coming. Are my plants gonna flood? The question is, well, they may not. She said, well, can you come out and see? I was like, hey, that's fine. I'll come out early that morning and come see. When I did go see, I see people walking and I'm looking and I see the lady that called me. And I'm like, what are y'all doing? We flooded. I see them with trash bags. I mean, people are crying. I mean, they're trying to make their way and people are just hysterical. I'm like, flooding? What flooding? We've been flooded. I said, why you didn't call anybody? We couldn't. Phone lines are down. Phones are down. Some of our phones went underwater. I'm like, what is going on? So I said, hey, pack up as many people as I could in my truck. Let's go. We're driving. I said, let me go check on my house. I can't get through to my family. I tried to get home and then I was flooded. So I was homeless as well. Couldn't reach anyone, couldn't get through the water. I was homeless. So we found a nearby shelter. And when I went into the shelter, I saw the chaos. A lot of the workers, the Red Cross workers and shelter workers couldn't get there because they were flooded out and they didn't have a way to get there. So I volunteered my time and everybody, we were trying to get coordinated. It was chaotic. So I said, man, what could we do? So waiting till the waters receded so we can get back to our homes, I said, we need to get together and try to find out a solution. As an extension expert, this is what our charge is. So I saw the gaps. I mean, many of the gaps involve like long-term community recovery efforts. Extension is extension is a vital key. There are four key. I think there's four key groups: local government, healthcare, faith community, and extension. These are all things that we do every day to serve our community. How can we share our resources? What resources are available or missing? Most important, how can we provide training to other extension staff in emergency management? As you see in the pictures, we started to do an array of things. We partnered up with local nonprofits, schools, federal agencies, anyone, even volunteers, to get this message out. But we went a step forward. We have a mobile unit that can travel this entire state that brings all kind of technology, knowledge to the community, and we can bring it to them. If you don't have Wi-Fi, it's built-in Wi-Fi in the vehicle. If you need a cleaning station, we have a cleaning station located inside the vehicle. If you need to learn how to wash your hands properly, which works great for what we're going through right now with the COVID, we have those stations. We have a whole technical lab that we can do when a lot of people who flooded didn't know how to get access to these resources or lost the ability to get access or have limited resources so they can't do it. We have those resources. We brought those resources to the community. That's, as a second responder, that's our charge and that's our job. We can assist, and I saw the definition earlier, we can assist first responders, or when the first responders can't be in that position, we can take that place.
David Bocage from New Orleans, Louisiana, in the Gentilly area, and I came as an invite by Mr. Brown Coleman to learn more about sustainable farming and how to incorporate this type of training and and way of agriculture within our community and bring this type of farming within the urban setting. Over the past 3 sessions, we learned about composting, irrigation systems, and we learned tonight about, we learned water barrels last week, but we went further into the assembly of the water barrels and also hydroponic systems and aeroponics, and learned how the system works and how to assemble that as well. So I've thoroughly enjoyed the session so far, and I'm looking forward to the other ones to come.
Okay, guys, after the dust settles, if you say something will happen after the dust settles, you mean that a situation will be clear, that it has calmed down. Once the dust settles, second responders, called extension, takes over. Community presence. A community's essence, which is a combination of its identity, purpose, and culture, is dynamic. It is influenced or shaped by what the community knows. Extension, through its educational program, plays a large part in creating that community knowledge. Community presence does not always mean being around. It does not always mean showing your face. Just be present. Did you all catch that? That's not what we do as second responders. Community presence does mean being around, showing your face, just being present. Living where you are working is a huge plus. Your presence is already there within the community. So go ahead and show your stuff. Word of mouth. Word of mouth describes information that is passed orally from one person to the next person, from one group to the next group. It's almost like a domino effect. Informal advertising. It's word of mouth. In my situation, I was invited to go to an after-school program to present for the entire school year. There are several programs that are being offered at the after-school program. Well, because of that word of mouth, I now present at 3 of those after-school programs. Pre-existing partnerships with agencies. We all have those. Having those pre-existing relationships with partners is also a plus. It's a two-way street. They know what you have to offer, and you know what services that they offer to their clientele. So always try to drive that two-way street as often as you. Having a seat at the table. Just about everyone is familiar with the phrase, having a seat at the table. If you're not, today you will learn a little about it. When one is provided with a seat at the table, it represents an opportunity to be heard, to make choices, to make a difference. So take your seat at the table and make that difference.
Linking the citizens of Louisiana with opportunities for SU success. Sometimes being a second responder after an emergency is linking the community to the person or the agency that they need in order to put the pieces of their puzzle back together. Oftentimes as second responders, we would go out into the community to conduct workshops or after school programs, but during this pandemic, we are unable to do so. Therefore, we must remain innovative and find ways to meet the people where they are and provide information via multiple streams or multiple platforms. The Southern University Ag Center is utilizing multiple streams. We're currently using Zoom, Teams, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, our website, email, mail outs, and of course, our mobile unit. Our SNAP Ed program, Nutritionally Yours, has recorded a series of videos on various topics. Some of the topics include healthy eating on a budget, cooking with your kids, and one that is a vital topic during this pandemic, hand washing.
Washing your hands properly is one of the most important things that you can do to keep microorganisms from contaminating food. You should follow these 5 steps to proper hand washing. This process should take about 20 seconds. You want to wet your hands under running hot water, as hot as you can stand it. Then you want to work up a lather. Rub in between fingers and underneath fingernails. You want to do this for about 20 seconds or until you sing the happy birthday song. Wash your wrist. Then you want to rinse thoroughly. Dry your hands using a single-use paper towel. And use the paper towel to turn off the faucet and open the door. These tips were brought to you by Southern University Ag Center SNAP Ed program.
In conclusion, there are many ways that we can support our first responders. However, our main objective as a second responder during crisis is to quickly enable Louisiana's citizens back to economic viability. Through the use of our many extension programs, we've helped farmers mitigate risks, we've connected our communities to various resources, and we take a holistic approach when meeting the needs of our families.
Okay.
You know what, Southern JAG team, you did a
We're not
fantastic.
quite done, Molly.
You did a great job in helping us really feel the urgency and how you responded. There's been a few questions that I hope you can address. So we had a couple questions around the mobile support unit. And
hold on, Molly, before we go there, can we finish with the social action charge?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's okay. You were just excited. I understand.
I am. You guys are doing great.
Okay, so we really wanted to sit down and leave you guys with the social action charge. Basically, how we're going to put this in action, where to go from here. Social action is about people coming together to help improve their lives and solve the problems that they face and those within their communities. It involves people giving their time and resources for the common good. To give you guys a visual, social action is Team Southern JAGriculture. We all acted individually, but then I can say we are truly blessed that we work together. We have an extension department that truly supports us in our programmatic efforts. And even further, we have a cohort of coworkers who literally are willing to step in and stand in the gap for any of us. I know on countless occasions I've had to call on Kiana to do programs, on Jill to do cooking demonstrations at a summer program. Nicolette has been the MC for several of our programs, and Dr. Ford will literally come on a drop of a dime if you need to do a hydroponic lesson. So that's just stepping in a gap and using those resources. But today, when you guys leave this webinar, we want you to think of innovative, impactful. We want you to think of how you can add capacity to your programs and how you can make the change and empower your community in the wake of the current national pandemic. But then after you think of those ideas in those ways, we want you to go a step further. You have to put your ideas into action. How can you step up and be the change you want to see? So for example, we've had the opportunity to attend 2 Impact Collaborative conferences, and we came in with the program, but we added so much capacity to it. During the first Impact Collaborative program, we came up with the HUDAT plan, and that was disaster adaptive territories, how we can help territories become disaster adaptive and just basically have a plan in place to mitigate those losses. Now at the second Impact Collaborative Conference, we talked about even extending it on to low resource farmers and starting the Pastures and Disaster Emergency Preparedness Plan. So now that we have that and we went through the innovation lab and process mapping and using different frameworks, we were able to outline a plan of action. How are we going to identify which communities to prioritize and implement our programs? And we took a step forward. So now today, we hope we have empowered you with enough information to move forward. Think about those ways and push and be the change you wish to see within your communities. We really thank you for your time. And Molly, I'm going to turn the screen back over to you.
Okay, you know what? I think everyone heard the call. This has been awesome. So, and it looks like Nicolette, you talked about how the mobile technology unit was funded. And so we're what in the chat. And I'm wondering, there's another question from Chris about, says, awesome mobile support. If we wanted to raise funds for one of those, what's the ballpark cost range?
Ooh, the mobile technology unit was a couple of, let's see, $75,000. That's kind of a ballpark figure.
Sure. Okay, great.
I'm sorry.
No,
I'm sorry, 750,000.
Yeah, 750,000.
I'll put another zero on it. Is that what you
Yes.
said?
Yes.
So 750,000. Okay.
That's correct. I'm sorry, 750,000.
And there's been a couple of questions around the youth program. So Jeremiah asks, did you work in conjunction with 4-H during the flood to help educate children when they were not able to go to school?
Yes, we do. We have 2 4-H programs in St. Helena and Tangipahoa Parish. And the unique thing about this, majority of the students that were participating in the 10th after school program were already 4-H members. So, you know, it was just a familiar face at the right time.
Excellent. And Cameron asks, what were some of the challenges executing the youth support program after the flood in 2016? And following up, also, what does this look like for your office with the pandemic and social distancing now?
Okay, I'll take that. So I think the biggest challenge for us is when our youth started moving out of the shelters. So St. Helena Parish, you know, it's a unique situation because, you know, of course we have a lot of poverty. So a lot of the families were being asked to move to Mississippi's, to locations like Mississippi. So we sit like right by the Mississippi state line. So that was one of the challenges, trying to be able to, you know, work with those families to still be able to support them, but not having to cross the state line.
And how about right now? How are you all supporting the youth?
So during the pandemic, for me, it was kind of an easy transition because all of my students were previously inside of GroupMe. So GroupMe, of course, is an app where you can constant contact with your youth organizations. So it was a pretty easy transition. So basically, we use GroupMe and we do virtual club meetings now.
Excellent. So that was GroupMe.
Yes. GroupMe is used to keep constant contact, you know, just to let them know what's coming up. And of course, we use, you know, tools like Zoom, Blackboard, where we have our regular 4-H club meetings.
Excellent. Thank you. So I see a lot of messages singing your praises. This is a fabulous presentation. We've gotten through all the questions here. Are there any other questions that we can? Got another one from Anonymous. What are your thoughts or ideas on creating proactive plans with recovery of COVID-19 with an unknown date when everything will open again?
I didn't hear that one, Molly. Could you repeat it?
Sure, I'll repeat it. What are your thoughts or ideas on creating proactive plans to help with the recovery of COVID-19 when there's an unknown date when everything will open again?
I know for the youth development department, of course, you know, once everything opens, we'll be back to normal. But I can say that working virtually with our groups is working. Like they are being receptive. At first, it was, you know, kind of slow because you have to get to, you know, getting everybody together. But, you know, these kids, they're on social media, you know, they're FaceTiming because they hardly ever talk to each other on the telephone. So, you know, it's working. It's actually working. So I think as far as the youth development department go, we will be good either way. If this thing lasts for the rest of the year, I hope not. But if it does, you know, I think we'll still be able to reach our target audience.
Additionally, extension-wide, our communications department is doing an amazing job of providing trainings with us. We recently had a MS Teams training. So we're learning different platforms we can utilize. As you see the videos that are being made, Kiana mentioned a few people are doing mail outs so they can still reach their population. And we're just basically being innovative. Without a date in sight, we're kind of all in this together. Well, not kind of, we are all in this together. So we're just we're transferring to a virtual platform to make sure we're still present for our groups and even our coworkers. And we have just an amazing communications department that are just teaching us different ways that we can be proactive and still keep contact with our program participants. As far as recovery from COVID-19, it's too many unknowns because, as you know, everything changes week by week. We're learning as the CDC and everybody else and all these other agencies are learning. For example, a couple of weeks ago, they told us don't wear masks, and now it's you need to wear masks. So we just, at this point, we're making sure that we're presenting relevant and truthful data. So we're just being proactive in that plan. And as far as a recovery plan, we don't have enough information to even put ourselves ahead of the pandemic.
That is very understandable. We're all in this together, no matter where you are. So some more questions have come in. Any efforts working in mental or behavioral health?
So as it pertains to providing tidbits to the youth, like Crystal said, our communications has done a great job at, you know, putting out different things about mental health. Of course, they've had seminars they have addressed amongst, you know, our colleagues. I've done some things to send inside of GroupMe to some of our youth groups, you know, to, you know, just let them know that it is okay to feel the feelings that they are feeling. Of course, I'm not a mental health professional, but I did reach out to a mental health counselor to provide those tidbits, you know, to kind of keep them going during this time.
Excellent. What do you need to reach more people? What sorts of support besides boots on the ground?
Repeat the question, Molly. I don't see it in the chat box.
Sure. So Chris asks, what do you need to reach more people? What sorts of support besides boots on the ground?
Like we previously mentioned, we're trying to utilize each of our our platforms. So we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, Twitter, mail outs, as I said again from Kiana. We're just trying to see what works best for community. Unfortunately, everybody doesn't have access to broadband. So that may look like, you know, sending things in the mail and brochures. We also have a campaign we're currently doing where we're doing a post on social media as well. So just really quick, because we don't want to inundate people with so much information. I know at a certain point about a week or two ago, I literally felt overwhelmed. I felt like I was watching the news just too much. It felt like it was really a burden on me and very heavy. And I had to take a step back. So when I think about that in terms of our program participants and our programs, we want to make sure we're providing them with relevant information, but we're not adding to their load. So we're just utilizing our online platforms and even snail mail, as some people call it.
Sure.
And things like that.
That makes sense. You know, we want to reach everyone in every way we can, right?
And the great thing is, we're working with agencies we already have pre-existing relationships with and communities we already serve. So you pretty much know the needs of your community. So as Nicolette mentioned, with her younger group, her youth group, they already are utilizing GroupMe and Zoom. So it was an easy transition. However, if you're in a more rural area working with an older population, you'll know, hey, I think I need to get out mailings. And I don't know what every extension department does, but at Southern, we have sign-in sheets for every program. So we have access to their contact information so we can get in touch with them.
Fabulous. We've got a lot of questions coming in. Trinity asks, she says, awesome presentation. What are some of the programmatic resources you are currently offering to engage your youth during the COVID-19 pandemic?
Okay, let me answer that. So we just had a meeting on Tuesday. We normally have our Blackboard meetings on Tuesday, 7:00 p.m. But next Tuesday, we're going to teach them how to make their masks. When the CDC came out and said that you should not, of course, we're supposed to be social distancing, but when they said that do not go out without your mask, I thought it would be a great idea to use some fabric that one of my club leaders have had on hand. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to get the fabric. I have everybody's address. I'm going to mail them a piece of the fabric, along with all the supplies they will need to do this project, because I know, that they can't get out, but I can. So I'm going to send those out to them, and we're going to make masks online. That's just our way to do our club meeting and still be able to do our enrichment activities.
Excellent. Jeremiah asks, he says, here in Maryland, we are canceling 4-H events like county fairs, youth development activities, etc. I understand Louisiana is being hit even worse by COVID-19. Are you all facing difficulty of having to cancel these events in your state too?
Mm-hmm.
Well, at the current moment, we're not doing anything, before May 30th, I think that was the last mandate that came out. But we stay, in constant contact with our administrators, and so they'll update us, as time go on. But of course, we're just like every other state. We're following the guidelines, that they are putting before us, and we just gotta kind of move prepared when they say move. But our vice chancellor does a great job, at letting us know, what is the possibilities of things that we may be able to do and what we can't do.
That's excellent. What is SU doing to make sure that redundant information is not produced in-house? Are multiple departments able to give input and expertise before publishing information?
Yes, so basically through research and extension, our researchers are the ones who tell us, I guess the needs that we have in our community. And that's the way that we work based on our research that's being done.
And all of our information is also being vetted through our communications team as well.
Excellent. And this is for Dr. Ford. During the flood, you mentioned gap identification. I believe other than seeing it himself in the situation, how did you go about gap identification, and how did you include to others to ID gaps? And that's from Trevor.
When I spoke about the gaps, I was speaking about when I was located in a shelter or seeing how disruptive everything, you observing, did an assessment of what were the gaps, what needed to be done, what didn't get done, what resources were needed, and what resources could have, waited and wouldn't have been primary. Also, I wanted to kind of piggyback on another question that you had asked on the way to how we're getting out information. Next week, I'll be starting a isolation education program. And the program deals with, the program is going to start with my own neighborhood. our social distance, but the way I made a dead end. So the way my street, I can see both sides of the street. So I put out papers saying that at this time, I'm going to be outside demonstrating from my yard how to use a hydroponic system and how to build one. I've given them a list of supplies. And if they don't, if they can't get all the supplies, I've gone and gotten some supplies. We're going to have a whole workshop, and it's going to be a distance. We're going to do the recommended distance really more, because everybody's going to be in their own front yard, and I'm going to be on the speaker, and we're going to do it like that. So that's another way that I see that people can do it if they're in neighborhoods. You don't have to go to people's house to contaminate or to break the rules. You can do it from your own front yard, and they can have in their yard and still do the demonstration, so they can do hands-on.
Excellent. Let's see, we've got, how are you making sure that communications with youth are monitored while using other forms of communication? And is parental consent required to participate, or will it be a requirement?
Nicolette, I'm gonna let you take that, because you work closely with your youth development group.
Yeah.
So I think Nicolette, I don't know if you heard the question. It was around youth development and parental consent.
I think she may be having connection issues.
Oh,
so while she works on getting back on, I'm gonna address.
Here I am.
Oh, there she goes.
It is. Okay, you said, how do I handle?
So the question is, how are you making sure that communications with youth are monitored while using other forms of communication? And is parental consent required as a participant, or will it be a requirement?
Yes, with all of our programs, we try to make sure, that our parents are involved. So like the meetings that take place at 7 o'clock on Tuesdays, we do have parents that log in, but before, of course, we had permission and consent to work with the kids, when we were going inside of the schools. But immediately when we found out, that we were going to have to go to social distancing and that we would be inside of our homes, our communications team actually emailed me forms to get out to our parents. So we, electronically sent out the forms. They turned them back in. So now we have permission to, communicate with our students via social media, through Blackboard, Zoom, text messaging, however we see fit. So we do have permission, and it's just basically our communications department put a form together, and it was already there, but we just wanted to make sure that we covered ourselves with sending it out again, so parents would know, if their kid ends up on the news, they gave us permission to do so.
Sure. So one quick one for Nicolette, is there a link to your youth development resources that you can share and how you're assisting youth during the pandemic?
Nicolette, would you like me to pull up your blog post you recently submitted, and you want to talk about it right quick, or?
Yes, you can pull up the blog post while we're on here. Yes, so everything that I do with my youth groups, I submit to our blog, and you can go to suagcenter.blogpost.com, and there you can keep up with us and see everything that we're doing. And you can actually, I do not have a personal page per se, because I like to drive all the traffic back to our main social media hubs. So we're good with creating hashtags. And so when we create those hashtags, our communications department can get those pictures and they can upload them that way. So, just using hashtags is a good rule of thumb.
That's always great. Thank you for sharing that. One last question, and I'm also going to thank you all for hanging in here and showing the way. So we've got one last question, and that's when did the SNAP Ed program shoot the hand washing video? Was it specifically for COVID-19?
No, so our SNAP Ed program is really proactive, and they're really present on all platforms. YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and they shot the video. They have cooking demonstration videos. They have cooking with your children and different things. We just knew that it was shot really close to it. Like you would think that they had a magic glass and knew that they needed to cover this topic, or maybe it's in their curriculum. I've never looked at their curriculum specifically, but it was not shot after social distancing. But it's definitely still relevant and useful. I also wanted to take a second and highlight, this is our Ag Center's main page. You can go on here and find a lot of information. And we actually have a link to COVID information directly that our communications department tends to update daily. So that could be anything from university updates to CDC and national guidelines.
Thank you so much for sharing that, your other resources, your experiences. You really are shining the light and leading the way. And thank you for being with us today. And the recording will be available. And please, please, please let us know how it is. I just put the link to the feedback form so that we can let the Southern JAGs know what you thought. So again, thank you all.
Thank you again for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.